Hey everybody, it's Mr. Williams. We're going to go over a reading pertaining to or associated with the New England colonies and the Middle Colonies. We talked about that a little bit, but this is going to be a good overview that discusses the big themes about each of the regions, because we're not going to spend a ton of time narrowing down every single colony, because there's a lot to cover in this given short period of time. So let's go ahead and start with the section summary. Although farming was difficult in New England, the forests and fishing grounds were rich resources. The Puritans founded a colony to practice their religion freely. Religious disputes led people to found new colonies. The growing number of colonists led to many changes in New England. All right, and this first thing shouldn't be too surprising to you, because we know that to be fact already. Geography of New England. New England covers the northeastern corner of the United States, with Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island in the south, and New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine in the north. Now, it's important to note that Vermont is not yet a colony that we are going to talk about, and Maine actually belongs to Massachusetts, so those are connected. Much of New England is hills, low mountains, and forests. The thin, rocky soil of the narrow plains made farming difficult, but just off the coast were rich fishing grounds. And again, this is all prior knowledge when we talked about the economy of these regions. Not great for farming, but good for trade. Puritans in Massachusetts. The Puritans, a larger group than the Pilgrims, wanted to reform, not separate the Church of England, okay? So it's important that we understand these two groups, okay? You've probably heard of Pilgrims before, but we also have Puritans, okay? The Pilgrims were the group of people that left England because they wanted to practice religion a certain way, and the king said no, and so they moved and settled in basically what is now Plymouth, Massachusetts. The Puritans, they had things a little bit different. They said, we're going to make things different because we're going to reform them. Reform means to change. So these guys, the Puritans, were basically telling the King of England, we have a better way of practicing religion. This is what we think you should do. But if you're telling the king what he should do, he's not going to want to hear that. And if you're questioning the leadership of the king, that's not putting you in a very good position. So they had to leave because basically they were getting in trouble. All right. They, the Puritans, were an influential group of professionals, including merchants and lawyers. In the 1620s, King Charles I forced hundreds of Puritan ministers to give up their positions. In 1630, about 900 Puritans formed the Massachusetts Bay Company and set sail for Massachusetts and New Hampshire. They were led by landowner and lawyer John Winthrop. The Puritans believed their lives would be an example to others. Their main settlement was Boston, located on an excellent harbor. By 1643, about 20,000 colonists lived in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. By the mid-1630s, the colony had an elected assembly, the General Court, to which each town sent its representatives. So they have people there that are representing their interests. An elected assembly means people vote for these individuals, all right? Adult male Puritans elected the General Court and the colony's governor each year. Although they founded a colony in order to worship as they chose, the Puritans did not offer non-Puritans toleration or recognition that other people have a right to different opinions. In other words, it was the Puritan way, or you left, or you were forced to leave. So the Puritans had this belief of like freedom of worship, but it really was more about they wanted people to follow what they felt was the correct way to worship. Religious disputes led to new colonies. And that's a big thing here, because some of these people who didn't agree with the Puritans, they were like, they had to leave, all right? Because the Puritans didn't want people just staying there that were questioning their authority. Roger Williams, minister of a church in Salem, believed that Puritans should leave the Church of England and that colonists should pay Native Americans for land, not seize it or take it. Forced to leave Massachusetts Bay in 1635, he moved to Rhode Island. In 1644, colonists there received a charter of self-government from the king and decided that people of all faiths could worship as they chose. And you could probably not be surprised as to why he was told to leave, because if everybody worships the way they chose, that's not really what the Puritans are wanting, okay? Anne Hutchinson, a Boston woman who questioned some Puritan concepts, was put on trial in 1638, expelled or told to leave from Massachusetts, and founded a settlement in Rhode Island. A woman who was a free thinker, meaning thought for themselves and spoke out and questioned things, was a very, very dangerous thing for the Puritans. And that's part of the reason why she was asked to leave. Thomas Hooker, a minister, also left Massachusetts with 100 followers in 1636 and founded Hartford, Connecticut. In 1639, the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut established a new government with an elected legislature and governor. That means the legislature, where the laws are made, was chosen by people, and the governor, who's the individual leader of the colony, was voted by people. In 1662, Connecticut received a charter granting it self-government. That means they get to run the government and run the colony the way they want to. In 1638, John Wheelwright, who was forced out of Massachusetts for agreeing with some of Hutchinson's views, that's Anne Hutchinson, founded Exeter, New Hampshire. Massachusetts tried to control New Hampshire, but in 1680, the king made it a separate colony. The thing you need to understand about all these colonies, Connecticut, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island, were all founded or created by people who disagree with the Puritans. That's why Massachusetts Bay was not this huge colony, because the three surrounding colonies around them were all people that disagreed with the Puritans. That's why they have 4 colonies in New England and not just one huge one. Puritans believed that towns and churches should govern themselves and that people should work hard and live in stable families. Each Puritan town set up a town meeting or an assembly of townspeople that decides local issues. New England families earned their living by farming, making leather and other goods, fishing, and shipbuilding. By the 1660s, 300 ships from New England were fishing off the coast or shipping goods across the Atlantic Ocean. And so remember when we were talking about trade, that's what we're discussing here. We're discussing the fact that New England is largely made of people that are trading goods. And even though there is some farming, which is going to be possible, it's not widespread. By the 1670s, the Native American population fell to 12,000 due to European diseases. And this is the unfortunate reality, because these diseases that Europeans are bringing are just wiping out natives left and right. In 1675, the chief of the Wampanoag, Metacom, also called King Philip, fought Puritan expansion. Some Native Americans supported him, but others helped the settlers. The fight, known as King Philip's War, killed thousands and destroyed 12 towns. In 1676, Metacom was killed. By then, a new generation born in America was focused on farming and business, not religion. All right. Let's go to the Middle Colonies. Summary. The Middle Colonies' soil and climate were conducive to farming. Quakers founded Pennsylvania and Delaware. People from many European countries settled in the Middle Colonies. And one of the things that's unique about the Middle Colonies, it's kind of called this melting pot, because you have all these different religions, all these different people that are coming to the Middle Colonies, and it's very different than what you see in New England. Geography of the Middle Colonies. The Middle Colonies comprised 4 states, as we become 4 states, originally colonies: New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. New York was the largest and northernmost. The Hudson River flows south through eastern New York. It empties into the Atlantic Ocean at New York City, which is today the most populous city in the country. New Jersey, just south of New York, is mostly lowland along the Atlantic coast. Pennsylvania is the region's 2nd largest state. Its largest city, Philadelphia, is located on the Delaware River on lowlands in the southeast. Delaware, the smallest state, is located south of New Jersey and also lies along the Atlantic coast. The warmer, longer growing season and fertile soil made farming easier in the Middle Colonies than in New England. Farmers grew wheat, fruit, and vegetables. And we know that the Middle Colonies were considered okay for farming, much better than New England. New York and New Jersey. New York was originally called New Netherland and was ruled by the Dutch. By 1660, Dutch farmers in the Hudson River Valley prospered. That means they were successful. All right. And fur traders profited from dealing with Native Americans. The Dutch, and we're talking about the Netherlands, also made money trading with merchants in British colonies, which violated British mercantile laws. And what that means is that the British didn't want their citizens trading with other countries. They wanted those goods going back to England and England only. The small ruling Dutch population felt hostility from other settlers. New Netherland blocked access between England's northern and southern colonies. In 1664, England's King Charles II granted the Dutch colonial land to his brother James, who conquered it. The colony was renamed New York after James and the Duke of York. New Amsterdam, its capital, became New York City. So basically what England did is they used force and their strong military to drive the Dutch out of the area, which is now New York City. New Jersey was established in 1665 when part of the southern New York was split off into a new colony. It began as a proprietary colony, or a colony created by a grant of land from a monarch to an individual or family. In 1702, however, it became a royal colony, a colony directly controlled by the English king. So there's a big difference. Proprietary means it's like one person or a group. Royal colony, if you see the word royal, it's talking about the king, okay? New York had become a royal colony in 1685. Now let's get to the interesting part. My thing is the most interesting part, which is Pennsylvania and Delaware. In the 1640s and 1650s, new religious groups emerged in England, including the Quakers. These are a very unique group whose ideas set them apart from most groups. That means they were thinking about things that were far different than anybody else at that time. They believed that all people are equal, have a direct link with God, and therefore do not need ministers. All right, so you might be thinking to yourself, if everybody is considered as equal, this may be a colony that does not use certain types of labor to take advantage of them, like Native Americans, indentured servants, or African slaves, okay? By the 1660s, thousands of English Quakers refused to pay taxes to support the Church of England because they didn't agree with it. To provide safety from persecution, that means getting in trouble and being thrown in jail largely, William Penn, a wealthy Quaker leader, used his connections with King Charles II to get a charter for a new colony in North America. In 1681, he received an area nearly as large as England. Penn viewed his colony as a holy experiment to see if people from different religious backgrounds could live peacefully. This was revolutionary, folks. Nowadays, we think of this as common. This was a brand new idea. In 1682, he wrote his frame of government for Pennsylvania, which granted the colony an elected assembly and freedom of religion. He did not allow colonists to settle on land until Native Americans sold it to them. So this is one of the few colonies where you're not going to see a lot of hostility or fighting between natives and settlers. The first European settlers in Delaware were Swedish. The Dutch briefly took control, but lost it along with New York to the English. Delaware settlers were averse to sending delegates to a distant Philadelphia. Averse means they didn't want to do it. Penn gave the area its own assembly, and in 1704, Delaware became a separate colony. So one of the things you should see here as a theme is a lot of the people in the colonies have differing opinions, which is causing kind of a divide in the creation of new colonies. By the 1700s, more than 20,000 colonists lived in Pennsylvania. Farmers produced a surplus. That means they had too much of something. Because of its abundant wheat crop, Pennsylvania was called America's breadbasket. Manufacturers were appearing in the middle colonies producing iron, flour, and paper. Artisans in towns included shoemakers, carpenters, masons, weavers, and coopers who made barrels to ship and store flour and other goods. If you're an artisan, that means you have a specific skill that you use to make money. Pennsylvania's backcountry, or the frontier region, extending from Pennsylvania to Georgia, was home to Scott, Irish, and later Germans. They called themselves Deutsch for German and became known as Pennsylvania Dutch. By the 1750s, non-English settlers made the middle colonies the most diverse part of English North America. All right, so once you're done with the reading, any of the questions that are not crossed out, I would like you to work on and answer. And then when you're done with this, you're going to be submitting the assignment to the turn-in that you saw on the same page where you accessed this, okay? Thank you very much. I'll talk to you later.